Okay, so what we have here is the old parts I have removed already. So the two parts in the far back is really terrible. Inside completely corroded into smaller pieces, so it's rattling like crazy. The other two parts just in front is fairly bad. This one here is not so bad, but I choose to change anyway. I'm pretty sure that this is from original exhaust, so it's 22 years old. Yeah, so but they're out now. That went fairly good. I needed to cut in the connection here between the two back parts, but that's fairly okay. One I could simply break, it was so corroded. The other one I need to cut with a saw, but that was easy. They went out very nice and fine. Okay, so here we have the new part of this intermediate one. This is an original old Jaguar part I got. It's a new one. It's been on stock somewhere, I guess. It's not so expensive. Have to remember that these two parts, I should maybe have bought new ones of these, but I think they're okay. They are going here in between, so I took that from the old exhaust. I think they are okay. So this one I could get, but the four parts in the back, two in each side, I could not get anywhere as a Jaguar part or anything. I found a company, XJ Engineering in UK. They had all the drawings and were able to actually make them for me. They are only working in stainless steel. That is good, but expensive. But I think the back parts are the most important ones, or most exposed parts, so they are the most important one to have in stainless steel. Here's one of them. It's made very nice, thick welding everywhere. You can see all around on heads and everything. They made a small mistake when they sent this part. They had made a bend on, so I actually had to send it back, and then they made it straight instead. I have now had it on the car, all the parts to measure, and I needed to cut 6 cm off here. It's already done on both parts. It's absolutely no problem, easy to work with. So, and as I said, I already had it on the car, so I know they fit very well. There's one more here, part line, and the other two are actually, they're hanging in the suspension, or in the bracket in the back of the car. The car is here, so no problem. I have this little special pit, so I actually have a pit, but my garage is very short, as you can see. So instead of have the entrance to the pit at the end, I made this kind of entrance here. So I go down here, and I'm not completely finished. I have some light in one end. I need to put more light in both ends. But I'm lying down there with 60 cm deep, and I think that gives a very nice position lying down there and working. Of course, when you make an entrance to a pit like this, you have to remember to put this wood over the hole when you back out. And I have the wood lying here, and if you noticed some of them, and that's 3 of them, where the car is driving over, they're reinforced with steel angles on both sides. So you don't, if you have a weakness in the wood, it will basically break. But now it's supported with steel. And you can see I also have a steel frame around here. So that's safe enough, no problem with that. Okay, so, but since I anyway have the intermediate exhaust off, which is this one here, I wanted to change the support, the suspension on the back of the transmission, because that's actually sitting here behind here, so it's easier to change that when the exhaust is off. And I have it here, so that's the bracket that basically holds the whole thing. I have here old brushing and some thing here for the spring here. I have the new parts here and new lower part. I will show a little bit more in detail what I have. I have the new spring here. You can see that the new spring is higher. It's difficult to feel that it's harder than the new one, but I think it is. But anyway, I'm going to change that. I will show a little bit more in detail. But I just want to show underneath the car how this is, how I have put, I have supported under, because it's actually a little tricky down here, I would say. So if we go down under the car, so what we have here is by the way, I think okay. So we have the exhaust here, that's where the other end is coming out. Yeah. So I have made a support just under the pan of the transmission. The bracket here is mounted on these screws here and go over, and here is where the spring is around and the rubber brushing. And actually, in order to release these screws, you have to compress the spring quite a lot. So I'm doing that with a second jack here. So I have one jack under the pan, and the other jack I'm using to compress that spring. So when I'm going to mount it, I will put the spring and then the bottom bracket under, and then I will raise the jack high enough to be able to mount the nuts on here, and then it should be okay. So I also need to change this part here, which is the top rubber part for the spring. If you noticed here, just to show, I have mounted here. Well, the one screw is a mistake. I put a hole the wrong place, but it's for a temperature sensor I put into the oil pan for the transmission, so I can follow the temperature on the oil pan. The gauge I put in the middle console between the seats. So you cannot see it normally. You open there and then you will be able to read the temperature of the transmission oil. So the screw is where I first planned to have the sensor, but just behind, inside, there's a tube going, so there was not space for the sensor. I didn't realize that, so I had to blind that again and then put the sensor next to. Here is actually the plug that can give some troubles. If you have transmission issues, you can actually access, just give some better light here. You can actually access this plug without removing the bracket, but it's of course much easier now. So now I will just open it up and clean it very nicely. But I actually was able to do that. At one point I had some issues with the transmission. That's a very long story, which I would like to tell about at one point. Actually, I learned quite a lot about the transmission at that point. So I will come back to that in another video. But I was actually able, even with the bracket, to take this out, clean it and mount it again. That was a little tricky. But the short story of this this thing was that this speed sensor here, that's sitting in the back of the transmission, there is one more in the front as well. Yeah, I think you can see it here actually. There's one more there. This one in the front is actually measuring this rotation of the input shaft between the engine and the transmission, and this one here is measuring the speed of the shaft, outgoing shaft, which actually goes directly to here, to the output, of course. Oops, something just gave. You have maybe noticed here I put an extra support of wood over here under the pan, and that's actually now holding it. So I'm not sure what happened. maybe just the jack. It's not the newest jack I have, so that gave away. Anyway, always interesting and good to have. Okay, I'm back and I survived the inciting accident under the car. So what we have here is the part for the suspension on the for the back part of the transmission. So I have here, that's the big brackets, like this, straightforward. And I have the old rubber thing here, the old spring, and this brushing, and the bottom washer. So I have a new bottom washer. I have a new one of this, which is on top of the spring, but I'm not going to change that. It's still sitting on the car, the old, and there's absolutely nothing wrong. I have the new spring, which I showed before. It's a little higher. I don't know, I have the feeling it feels stiffer, which I like, because I have the feeling that sometimes it makes noise. And then new rubber parts that just goes in both ends of the spring. Where I have the biggest difference is on this part here. I think that's pretty clear that this is just disappeared apart, and this is crumbling completely. See, I can just do just here, it's just going into small pieces. It's really, really bad now. Probably there's some oil leaking, so it's actually being destroyed fairly fast. So I have a very nice new one of this now. Now it's already very dirty. So I'm going to put all this together. That should be pretty straightforward. And as I saw under, I used 2 jacks. One is now supporting the transmission, so it's not falling down, and the other jack I will put under this bracket here and lift it up, so I'm able to fix the screws on the side, because I have to compress this spring while lifting this up. You cannot do that by hand. So I'll do that, and then I'll come back to the exhaust. So now the bracket is mounted. And that went quite easy. So that's sitting, and I really have the feeling that the support is stronger now. So that's good. Okay. So a little section about these rings. They're in between the intermediate pipe and the downpipe from the engine. I was trying to reuse the old ones by also adding some sealing compound, which is the red one. And if you can probably see, there are kind of things missing on these rings, and they are quite corroded. And when I assembled that and tried that yesterday, it was also leaking, and a lot of exhaust went out with those. So I ran in and ordered right away some new parts at British Parts in UK, where I very often buy stuff. They're quite expensive. I think it was £23 each. And then this morning I was cleaning up all the tools, and I found out that well, I have 2 new ones lying already. So of course I canceled the order at British Parts. That's a small thing, but now I have these 2 new ones. So those I will try to insert now, and of course I expect now it will be tight. There's a huge difference between old and new ones. I don't know how clear it is to see, but that's how it is. And then I should actually be finished. I will just see if I can take a picture of the new exhaust also from underneath. So now we have it mounted in the front here with the 2 new rings I just showed before, and we have the exhaust going around here. I still not managed to build in all the light in my pit yet, but you have it here, one pot, and then we have here where it splits up, and the AJ Engineering provided this kind of assembly, which I think is quite simple, but I think they are also okay. A little like industrial stuff, but well, the car is a little industrial build up anyway. We have here, and then of course we have you see here comes the tube out. It's going here, down here, and at the end here you will see the last very nice stainless steel pot. There's also, as you probably some is aware, that up here you can get light on. There's the rubber mounting for the exhaust. Yeah. Okay, so I basically managed to get it up all and running. Thank you.